Good morning, good evening. Whoever you are, wherever you are, whatever you might be doing, we wish to welcome you to the Silverlight Show. The Silverlight shines to illuminate that which lies hidden in darkness. For those of you joining us today, we welcome you in. The Flat Earth, or more accurately, the Flat Earth myth. It always amazes me that here we are in 2021 and people are still adherents to this theory. Now, Silverlight stands for you believing what you believe, and I have no problem with that as long as it doesn't affect me. But when you look into some of the truths that are widely held about it, the flat Earth versus globe Earth really is not as big of a deal as some people would have you think. Let's take it back to the olden days when Copernicus and Galileo were running around. They weren't being charged by the church for the fact that they believed in a round spherical Earth. No. They were being harassed by the church because they had the wild idea that the Earth went around the sun. That's right, heliocentrism, which, as we know, was the correct idea. So it wasn't a flat Earth debate back then. It never has. Both in Isaiah and in Job, we have lines that specifically state the Earth is a sphere. And most people in ancient times wouldn't have even had the conversation. Think about it. You're a farmer in ancient times, or you're a city dweller in ancient times. You're talking back and forth. You're going to be talking about the town next door, or what your emperor / king / local nobility has done. You might have heard some news from a cousin that has come back from a long way away. The Silk Road existed long before the Romans became involved in it. So there would have been no discussion amongst the average person, and even the intelligent people, whether the Earth was round or flat. Indeed, old maps don't represent aerial views like we have now. Old maps would simply have the different towns and places and the number of days travel in between both marked off. So you would have Toronto to Brampton would be a 1-day travel, whereas Toronto to Hamilton would be 2 days travel. It'd just be a little circle, a little bunch of dots with circles, place names, and how many days written underneath. That was a map to the people that could read them. Let's not forget, most people couldn't read. Reading was originally a magic art. People who could write and read were mystical, and they held that power for a long time. If you were a scribe to a king or even a noble, you were essentially their court magician, because you were expected to have access to that knowledge. You were essentially Google in whatever period that you were in. If you didn't have the information, you were expected to know where to find it. And most scholars, well, they would have been aware of the verses in the Bible that state there's 4 corners of the earth, there's 4 pillars of the earth. But those don't say they're stationed at the corners. It just says there's 4 pillars. It's a very poetic thing to say. Somebody who'd done a little more research would have known that the Greeks had proved that the earth was round, and they'd actually calculated its radius pretty accurately, just simply by measuring how far the sun moves and being able to extrapolate. I'm not really an expert in that. I know that they did it, but it really doesn't affect us in our daily lives. The sun comes up, sun goes down, you go to work, whether it's farming, whether it's making something, or in the modern day where you go to your Tim Hortons, you pick up your cup of coffee and you go out. Your day does not change whether the earth is round or flat. And you almost never speak to anybody about it, do you? Chances are not. So, why do we have this horrible misconception that the people before the Middle Ages were all running around telling each other the earth was flat? It was a matter of no interest to anybody. Nobody was affected by it. Your horse didn't have to take into account anything other than the elevation. They didn't need to worry about rotation. People weren't spying enemies from a long distance away. Looking glasses were still a very exotic technology into the 15th century. So the whole idea about spherical Earth versus flat Earth is really a very modern concept. And keep in mind, its close friend, the hollow Earth. Yes, the hollow Earth. The Nazis had a division called the Ahnenerbe. Forgive me if I'm pronouncing that wrong. And one of their ideas was that since the Earth was hollow, they should be able to bounce radio waves off the solid Earth and get better radar images, get their propaganda sent out better. And they were even able to find some success with this because the Earth has a layer in the atmosphere that does act like a reflective layer. It's something that all modern radio stations use. So they had the wrong idea, but as luck had it, the evidence supported their crazy idea because they could increase their radar signals. They could increase their radio broadcasts. But whereas they thought the Earth was hollow and it was going up in the distance instead of down, well, they were Nazis. These were the most fanatical, weird Nazis, and they were there to get away from Jewish science. Like physics and chemistry and all those crazy things. Arabs never had anything to do with it. Indian people never had anything to do with it. The Chinese never had anything to do with it. No, just Jews. But that was the kind of mentality that you were dealing with. And the same thing holds true for much of the world. Sure, you get a leader in there who'd be hyperactive and hypersensitive and just wanting to flex his muscle and show his power. And he'd be out there, yes, the world is flat, the world is hollow, and we're living on the inside. Whatever his insane idea was, that was the ruling of the day. And you had to go along with it. Because people don't like to be proved wrong, no matter how much science you have on your side. The same is true today in the flat Earth debate. No matter how much science we give them, somebody I was discussing with this week used two very interesting lines against me. Science lies. I said to him, okay, so when you start your car up in the morning or your bus or however it is you get to work, does it work? Well, yes. Well, that's because it's science. We've spent the past couple hundred years refining an internal combustion engine to the point where it will work. That's science. And he says, well, I need empirical evidence. I said, okay, I owned a telescope and binoculars. I know that the constellations move. I know that the sun precesses from one place to another. So how do you explain that with a flat Earth model? And he couldn't. So then he decided to attack me. Oh, you think you're better because you're educated? No, it just gives me access to more tools. And it allows me to critically think. Whereas this gentleman was far away from critically thinking about anything. I only hope the gentleman was drunk, because I hope he was having a good time. But anyways, like I said, people get these ideas in their head, and they like to lump them into with racism, with all sorts of crazy things. And this is why people get suspicious around flat earthers. Not only because they're ascribing to a theory outside the norm, but because a stunningly disproportionate amount of them also adhere to other crackpot theories. David Icke. No, you read him. He's actually got a couple pretty darn good ideas. He's there talking about trying to raise your spirit vibration and really good things. And that's when he starts to go a little bit weird about the royal family are alien lizard people and they can transform their shape at will. That's where you have to go, no, you had me at the whole enlightenment part, but then you lost me when you started about the transforming aliens, because If they are transforming aliens, what about the Japanese royal family? What about the, what is it? Sweden still has a royal family, I think. Are they all related? Are they all not related? It just gets really impossible to untangle after that. And like it or not, Occam's razor usually is correct. The simplest explanation is generally the right one. The simplest explanation is we can do a whole lot of experiments to prove that we're on a spherical Earth. And you're allowed to question that. You're allowed to say, but Silverlight, what about this? And if you have a good argument, I will more than give you credit for it. Because I like thinking. I like the debates. I like to get into it politely and respectfully with people. Because that's the hint. You got to be respectful with these people. You can't just say, you're an idiot. You're respectful to them as long as they're respectful to you. And even then, maintain a proper decorum around them. As long as they're not real crackpots and they just genuinely believe that the earth is flat or hollow, I make no distinction there, then it's interesting to talk with them. But like I said, just because you believe differently than anybody else, you have the right to think that. You have every right in the world. We wish to thank you for joining us on the Silverlight Show today. If you enjoyed this, please like, share, and subscribe. And we hope everybody has a fantastic day.